Okay, we're going to get this started. We heard that there's an accident on Balearic and more people will be coming in, but we want to go ahead and move forward. So greetings to all of you and welcome. We the people for the people. I'm Lori Street, and I just want to say, look what you all have created. Make no mistake, without your financial, physical support, we would not be doing this evening. Thank you, each and every one of you who have contributed money to this campaign. Although GoFundMe page indicates there's like $3,200, that's what's been raised, but that's not the balance, I promise you. For our next event, forum, will be on the 26th of September. It will be on deciphering the upcoming proposed declarations, and we have a venue change. We're meeting at the Woodlands. That's already been confirmed and deposit paid, so we're getting the word out on that. So we will continue to move forward in our campaign to take back our village. And now I had one other thing to say. We did have petitions, but I believe that they have all been filled. I didn't get enough of them, but we'll have them at the next forum also. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Phil Limler.
How about now? Yeah. All right. First of all, I need to tell you, I was just told that we've got to explain the exits out of here or the fire marshal's likely to shut us down. So if there's any reason, there's, of course, exits the way you came in. There's an exit out this side way, out that door, out that way. And any other exits that anybody knows about? Over to the side over there as well. And I hope that that suffices. What's that? In the rooms too. They have exits in them? Okay, great. So through the library, so we should have plenty of ways to get out of here should we need to. What we're going to be talking about tonight is the Comprehensive Master Plan. I'm going to refer to it as the CMP, primarily because I get tired of saying Comprehensive Master Plan. So the CMP is something that's you're probably all somewhat familiar with. It is a document that's about 540 pages long. I've read it numerous times. I've studied it. I've looked at different sections and have a pretty good understanding of everything that's in there. And tonight, what we're going to be talking about really is just a small part of it. You cannot imagine how difficult it is to consolidate 540 pages of stuff down into a 30-minute or so presentation. But in essence, that's what we've done. Tonight, I'm also going to give you some figures. We're going to talk about statistics and numbers. Everything that I talk about tonight is directly out of the CMP. I'm not making up any numbers. I'm not assuming any numbers. These are numbers that are used by the authors of the CMP and the process that we go along. I'm going to try and take the first technological jump here, and hopefully this will work. And we'll see. Boom. Tonight, we're talking about the problems and the promises of the CMP. What is the CMP? The CMP, or the Comprehensive Master Plan, in essence, is a long-term development plan for Hot Springs Village that will forever change the way we live. This is and there's another technical challenge here, is the pointer Nope, not working. This is kind of a schematic of the village. It's a little bit kind of crunched together, but you can get an idea of the outline of the village, and then all of the circles inside of that are all of the areas that the CMP proposes to develop over roughly a 20-year period of time. And as you can see, it's quite extensive. It rebuilds much of the village. We'll end up with, over time, a town center at the Woodlands, which is kind of the primary target of the CMP, and mostly what we're going to talk about tonight, otherwise we'd be here for hours. Of course, there's a Coronado Center, and a Carmona Center, and an Eastgate Center, and you can see all the different areas that they propose to change. Sorry, Miss Nally. And of course, it also includes an unknown amount of roadway and street rebuilding. Every time you redo one of these neighborhoods, of course, all the streets and the roadways and everything are redone as well. So it's a massive, massive construction project. And again, this is supposed to go on for over 20 years. Pardon I was assuming that I would have a microphone that worked. I've only got two hands, so I'm going to work through this. So, once that's all done, this is kind of what we end up with. 12 new restaurants, 10 of them in the town center alone, a couple of grocery stores, 2 hotels, a couple of resorts, a theater, an amphitheater, an unbelievable amount of apartment buildings and condominiums and things they call cottages, and even an industrial light manufacturing facility. The reason that they have that is they claim that there'll be so much construction, the workers are going to need a place to build cabinets and do plumbing work and store and keep and work on all the supplies they have to build out all these places in the village. Quite unbelievable. This is an overview of the town center itself. And this is an artist rendering. If you go into, I believe it's pages 160 through 163 in the CMP. Yes, sir.
Quick question. Who authored this? Is this the $500,000 we paid?
Yes. Yes, it is. And please hold your questions. Write those down. We'll get those later. But yes, this is the $500,000 consultant plan that we got. Can you someone dim the lights? Help. And if you go into the CMP in pages 160 through 163, it'll actually identify some of these buildings for you. It'll tell you exactly where the grocery store is and where the hotel is going to be and the resort and all the other commercial space that they're building in there. And a whole bunch of retail space. Just to give you an idea, in addition to the 10 restaurants that we talked about here in the town center, which God knows how would we ever support 10 restaurants, additional restaurants, but there's going to be coffee shops, a microbrewery, a bakery, butcher shops, ice cream parlors. There's going to be a movie theater, a bike shop, a garden shop, kitchen store, antique store, hardware store, clothing boutiques, leather shops, and on and on and on and on. It's all in the CMP. Now, the interesting thing about it is it's full of contradictions. I've read over my career hundreds of plans similar to this. I've built plans, I've analyzed plans. I've never seen anything more ridiculous than this. It not only contradicts itself. In some places it says we should build the town center first. In other places it says we should build the Coronado Center first. In other places it says we really can't build either one because we need a plaza first. And it's like the people that put this together weren't talking to each other. It's like Joe did pages 1 through 50 and Sally did pages 50 through 75, and it's just totally confusing. Here's the first major problem with it, is the CMP states before any of this can happen, we need the demand first. In other words, we need 400 people a day, and again, this is on page 171 of the CMP, we need 400 people a day to be able to come through the Woodlands area to be able to justify this. Because what happens is the developer, whoever we find to do this, is not going to develop without this demand. The retailers of all these stores, the bike shop and the pastry shop, et cetera, won't sign leases unless they see this demand. And then, of course, the banks won't finance it unless at least 60% of the retail space is leased. So where will these 400 people a day come from? It won't happen. Another major problem with the whole concept of the CMP is we're really not experienced as a village, as a management team, as a board of directors to handle something this large. When you completely rebuild the village in this dramatic and transformative way, we're going to get our hat handed to us in the negotiation process. A developer is going to come in and ask for things we're not prepared to give. We're not capable of doing that. So we'll either end up with an inexperienced or undercapitalized developer, or my biggest concern is we're going to end up trying to develop it on our own. In other words, we'll try a couple of developers, things won't work, it won't happen as fast as we need to. We're committed to making this thing happen once we get it started off. The POA has talked about it in several places in the CMP about doing the development themselves. Now, how scary is that? And again, page 165 and twice again on page 171, they talk about it. There's several other places there. And even though the POA has been advised by the consultants not to develop. Now, the question is once we build the town center with all of this retail space, and it includes apartment buildings all along the outside of it, because the theory is that people are going to live in these apartments, and they'll be the ones that are shopping at the bike shop, in the clothing stores, and the 10 restaurants, and all of that. So the function of this building scenario is build retail, build the commercial, and then build the apartments all around on the outside of this. So this won't work. First of all, as a village of 14,000 people, there's absolutely no way we can support this kind of retail. We can't make the retail we have work now. We can't make the restaurants we have work now. We just don't have enough people in the village to do that. So how is this going to work? You've got all this retail space and all this commercial space and then all these apartment buildings. What is their plan for doing this? Hold on to your seats. What they propose to do is to attract 20, 30, and 40-year-olds to come here to the village to live. That's who's going to live in these apartment buildings. Highly unlikely. it's an all or nothing gamble. In other words, if you think about this, if we build the retail space and the commercial buildings, and we build all these apartment buildings, and nobody comes to live here, we're gambling the village on it. Every one of us here is going to be responsible for this development.
General partners, limited partners.
So we're hoping that all of these millennials will come here and live here in the village. Now, when you think about that, it sounds pretty ridiculous. Because there's no jobs. Where are you going to work? If you're 30 years old, you're now living in an apartment behind the town center, where are you going to work? You've got no friends here. You have no reason to live here in the first place. And a 30-year-old is going to look at this as going, man, there is nothing to do there. And who at 30 years old wants to go live in a community where the average age is probably over 60? Probably doesn't fit well. If you look at the second largest millennial community in the United States is in San Diego. Okay? So here you're a 32-year-old guy and you're thinking about where you're going to live, and you're going, well, let's see, do I want to live in San Diego where there's everything to do and there's the ocean and there's the beach and nightlife, or do I want to go live in Hot Springs Village? So how could you build a marketing strategy and a plan that would be solely based upon that concept? Who would do that? What is wrong with these people? Whoops. I was able to find a Harvard study that says most of the millennial stereotypes that the board and the management team and our $500,000 consultants used says that those misconceptions, those stereotypes are not true. It's really a misconception that these people want to live in commercial and social centers. Of the millennials who moved last year, remember, our marketing program is based upon trying to get them to move here. Of the people that moved last year in this age group, 64% of them stayed in the same city. Harvard study says this. Why? Because they probably had a job. Of the 7% that moved out of state, they probably moved for a job as well. Yet we're going to spend over $100,000 a year and bet our future, the village future, on the fact that these folks are going to come and move here. Why was the CMP created? Is there any way we can get one more light up just over the top here so I can see my notes? I'm kind of working in the dark here, which is okay for a magician, but not so good for a speaker. Why was the CMP created? In other words, why did they come up with this in the first place? Well, the initial problem that we have as a village is a revenue problem. And what they're trying to do is solve that revenue problem. Page 313 out of the CMP basically says the amount of property owners and revenue streams do not support, thank you, do not support the amount of existing infrastructure. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a hard enough time seeing these buttons without doing it in the dark. If you look in the CMP, this again's out of the CMP. The summary says, currently we are projecting nearly a $45 million worth of maintenance needs over the next 3 years. So what that says is if you take our current operations of money that we have left over from property fees and golf and some other things, we're still $10 million a year underfunded. that means that maintenance needs that we have today are going unmet. In other words, we're putting this stuff off. There are things that we need to be doing here in the village, maintaining buildings, golf courses, roadways, and a variety of other things that simply aren't getting done because the village has not managed itself to be able to produce the revenue necessary to cover this. I mean, we can't cut the expense side of our financial statement very much. We still need the services. We still need the police and the fire. We still need all of the other amenities that we all came here to get. So the only option for us is really on the revenue side of things. So the theory behind the CMP was being, I'm going to call them non-marketing oriented people. They took a look at the village and said, my God, where are we going to get the revenue from? Well, look at all the land we out here. Let's just go develop all that land, and then we'll get all sorts of money coming in for more property fees and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't work. We are, in essence, and I'm using the figure $7 million short every year for maintenance. The way I get that is they say $10 million in the CMP, but that does not include, we get some residual value from the two-tier system. Y'all remember the two-tier system? Okay. A part of that comes from the two-tier system, and we've also increased the utility fees as far as the utility fees that we pay for water and sewer, et cetera. So a part of that's been offset. So we're still now only $7 million short, which after 5 years, according to my calculator, that's $35 million we're in the hole. And that doesn't include any money that the CMP is going to spend. So this is just maintenance needs that we can't cover now. How does the CMP address that? This, and I don't know how well you can see it, I apologize, we did not have a $75,000 budget to put this together, so this is a chart out of the CMP that basically looks out 20 years. This is in 2038. This is after the CMP has ran for 20 years and all the development that we've done and all the money we've spent and all these apartment buildings and retail spaces, and we've got all these millennials and Gen Xers running through the village. Here's the revenue we're going to get from doing that. $1,756,000 basically. Let's see, does that cover $7 million? I don't think so. So, first of all, who would do this? Who would build a business plan and a strategy to fix our revenue problem, rip the village apart for 20 years, and still come up short, and then put it down on paper? So, basically, the CMP does not solve our revenue problem. It states, if you do that calculation, we're going to be $5.2 million short every year, even after 20 years, and this is if the CMP works perfectly according to their plan and strategy. So where is this money going to come from? If you look at this over 20 years, if we continue the $5 million a year shortage over 20 years, that adds up to over $100 million we're in the hole. So again, just a recap, we're maintenance shortfall $7 million. The increases they're getting is 1.765, annual deficit of 2.3. Where's this money going to come from? Well, the other sad thing I find in the CMP is they start talking about this revenue, where they're going to get the money from. The first number one thing they talk about is the 5% increase on our property fees. The second thing they talk about is the special assessments. They kind of nose around the $150 special assessment a year for 2 years, but later on in it, they talk about how special assessments are wonderful, and these happen all the time, and villages and municipalities do it all over the country, and it's just a wonderful thing. Don't worry about it. So one way or the other, we're going to pay for this. Where do you think this is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen in 20 years or in 5 years or whenever this thing hits the wall? Where are they going to come for the money? There's only one way they come. That's us. That's us. They're going to get it from us in one way or the other. There's no other choice. Some of the problems with the CMP and why I believe it's destined to fail, again, my opinion, is the thinking process and the assumptions made are all wrong. First of all, it's just bad marketing. Nobody in their right mind, nobody I ever know, and I have a background in marketing, would ever create a marketing plan targeting millennials in our community to try to get them to move here. We will never become an active lifestyle community for all age groups. We're a retirement community. We can be an active lifestyle community for retirement, but to try to completely turn the ship into something we were not and never will be, and we won't fool these kids, okay? They're not going to come in here and look around at the restaurant and go, my God, where's the other millennials? So the whole concept just continues to put us farther and farther in debt. The next thing they do, of course, throughout the CMP all along, they're trying to sell us on why this is a great plan, and there's all sorts of things in there. Isn't this wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? But one of the things they do is they base this on communities that are not like us. In other words, they say, well, Hot Springs Village can do this. We can do this because look at all these other places throughout the country that did this. One is Boulder, Colorado. 108,000 people live in Boulder, Colorado. Plus, they have the University of Colorado there. They've got the Rocky Mountains. They've got ski resorts. They're probably 25 miles from Denver. So they've got a few things to be able to have something like a town center. New York City, Bryant Park. Yeah, they're a lot like Hot Springs Village. That's in the middle of Manhattan. Manhattan is full of people. I'm sure they've got 400 people a day walking around there. Detroit, Michigan, Rapid City, all municipalities and areas that are much, much larger than we are. Plus, they all have other tourism or colleges or things there that make them particularly attractive. And none of these communities are gated communities. You know, one of the problems we have is everything we do, and developers are going to look at this. You ask anybody with a background in development, they're going to come in and they're going to look at the numbers. You know, what's the traffic likely to be? Where is the buyers going to come from and the shoppers? And they're going to look at the closed gates and go, well, we're going to build all this out for an area, a population of 14,000 people? Absolutely not. Plus, they all have tourism and colleges or proximities to other markets. The other thing I want to mention back here is the last 3 of these that they use as examples in the CMP aren't even in existence yet. One of them had a start date of March 1st of 2018. It still didn't open yet. The other 2, Tinley Park is still in the thinking stage. They haven't even decided to do it yet. So is this all they could come up with? What happens if the CMP fails? Well, think about this. We have a developer comes in. We start ripping up the town center, building apartments and grocery stores and leather shops and all these things. And if it fails, what's going to happen? Those buildings are going to sit there, and we're going to have weeds growing up in the parking lot, and no one is going to shop at these places. Now, the roadways will be torn up. Think about the traffic and the construction mayhem of all of this building, of the cement trucks and lumber trucks and plumbers and electricians all driving around through the village. It's going to be one large traffic jam. I believe it's going to depress our property values. That's my concern. In other words, you've come here to look at Hot Springs Village as a potential place to live. You're driving down DeSoto Boulevard, and you drive by the town center, which now has nothing but vacant places and weeds in the parking lot. What is your thinking going to be? Wow. And once they start digging a little deeper and they find out the stupid mistake that we made as a village, and then they start looking at the fact that how many millions of dollars are you in debt? And they start doing more investigation, and they hear about potential special assessments and increase in fees and more amenities. It's going to depress our property values, my opinion. Once the train comes off the tracks, I believe we're going to see lawsuits. The developers that we signed deals with, which we're not capable of negotiating deals with in the first place, but if we do get them in here and we make commitments that we cannot afford or we cannot live up to, we're likely to see litigation. Construction companies that came in here, retailers who've signed leases, and how about all the property owners? What's going to happen? More special assessments, more taxes, higher amenity fees, mounds of debt. And think about this just for a second, just as a segue. How many here play golf? Okay. You're facing, if the CMP works as indicated, you won't get a tee time for 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time at the golf courses. I'll tell you, one of the things I like is to be able, today, I could take Gary and we could go out there and find a course somewhere to play on, to get on. That ain't going to be that way anymore. Same thing with the tennis players. There's going to be lines of people wanting the tennis courts. The natatorium's going to have lines. Everywhere is going to be congested with all these new people running around the village. So what happens then next? Okay, this has failed. First of all, the existing board and the existing management, they're going to be long gone. Okay, this will be a number of years down the road, and unfortunately, someone's going to be left to clean up the mess. It's going to be the new board, the new management, and all of us that are sitting here in the audience. We're going to be responsible for cleaning this up. What will we do to survive? Think about this just from a logic and a business standpoint. If you've built this huge development in Hot Springs Village where the retail and the success of the retail is based upon filling all these apartments with 20 and 30-year-olds, and they don't come, how do we keep the retail businesses alive? How do we keep them from turning into vacant buildings and empty parking lots? There's only one answer that I can see: opening the gates, which is absolutely absurd. It takes away every reason I moved here. I don't know about you all, but I love Hot Springs Village as it stands today. I think and we'll talk about this in some of the future seminars, I have an idea and some ideas, and I've talked to other people that are marketing experts here in the village about how do we create revenue. That's our only problem. Our problem is we don't need more buildings. I mean, we do need some, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but for the most part, we need to fix our revenue problem. We need to become a smart 2018 marketing organization, not an accountant-driven concept where we only look at the expense side of what we're doing. And as a result of all this, we're going to have to pay for it. More special assessments. Our property values are likely going to go down because no one's going to want to live here with the amount of debt we have hanging over us. There are things that we do need, and these are a part of the CMP. Part of the CMP. We need better internet service. We need better cell phone reception. We need some renovations at Balboa. We need numerous other projects here in the village. None of them are dependent on the CMP. Yet, the board and the communications coming out of there will try to convince you that, well, if you're not for better cell phone reception, you're not for the CMP. That's hogwash. That's just a management thing. Any decent manager would sit down with the cell phone companies and begin negotiating and working out some kind of a strategy to improve cell phone service. We don't need to create a $500,000 document to fix the cell phone reception in the village. So each of these projects and all of the other projects that we need and we would like to have can be done as separate individual projects. We just need a strategy and we need a way forward to do it that doesn't rip the heart out of Hot Springs Village. You know, we have a tremendous amount of human capital here in the village. We have probably got more intelligence of ex-managers and business people and strategists and everything. Why wouldn't we use that talent? Why wouldn't we develop? I talked to the board a couple of months ago about starting a business committee. I said, look, you guys, you're missing the business component in everything you do. You're not looking at this like business people. They won't talk to me anymore. But what we need is the people in the village as volunteers, maybe just as a consultant to bounce some ideas off of. Maybe we get a group together of people that have experience in X, Y, or Z, and we get them together and say, here's the problem, help us come up with a solution. The tremendous amount of capital here. We've got more capital probably in this room than most corporations do in their board and upper management structure. Why not use it? So we don't need the CMP for all of this. We just need good management and a strategy. Here's what I've been told every time I knock on the POA's door. I don't think they like me. What they say to me is, well, let's just let them try it. You know, let's go ahead and see if it works. And, you know, we're going to pass this all a little bit at a time. And the budget, you know, we got budget meetings. And so we're not going to do anything that doesn't make economic sense. And I look at them and said, man, you just passed a $500,000 CMP that makes absolutely no sense. And I'm going to rely on you to go spend my money on a crazy thing. And you just want to try it? If the POA decides to develop some parts, we're going to have spent that money and we're going to have made commitments. So the concept of letting them try it is a bad strategy. It needs to be stopped now before we get any farther in here. We need to get in there before we sign a developer, before we make any commitments. We're already hiring people. There's people now on staff at the POA that are designed to implement this plan. My biggest concern about all this is while they're spending all this time on charrettes and budget meetings and implementation strategies and presentations and going around the country doing declarations meeting, they're distracted. We're not managing the village. We hired this board and this management team to manage the village. They're not doing a good job. If they were, we wouldn't have $140,000 maintenance projects that are out of control. We wouldn't have had the problems at the gate system. That's a management problem. You can blame that on the company that we hired, but why would you pay them the money up front before the thing got work? I would never do that, would you? Nobody in this room would. So they're distracted. They're totally looking at the CMP and it's the savior, and they're all excited about it, but they're not doing their jobs. Again, my opinion. So here's the enterprise goals, again, right out of the CMP. Number one is we want to protect the community-wide property owner value and lifestyle. Wow. How does the CMP do that? In my opinion, it does just the opposite. In other words, if we build all of this and no one comes, Field of Dreams, we're not protecting our property owner value, and we're certainly not protecting our lifestyle. Everything becomes more crowded. We get things we don't want or need. It becomes a one big mess. Number two is they want to strengthen the financial health of the village. How can you say that you're strengthening the financial health of the village where your own plan, the numbers out of your own plan say you're going to lose $5 million a year? How does that strengthen the health of the village, the financial health of the village? And of course, the last one is build property owner trust and support. I don't even need to discuss that one. What can you do? Well, unfortunately, a lot of this should have been done before the CMP was passed. It's now passed. The new covenants are in place. The first thing you need to do is we all need to get involved. I sincerely appreciate everyone coming here tonight. This is a big step. Give yourself a pat on the back, yes. We need to support the We the People movement and the website in every way that you can. The board needs to know there's a substantial number of villagers that are against the CMP. Here's the interesting thing. Every single board member I've talked to in my meetings with the CEO, they all say that there are many more people here in the village that are for the CMP than are against it. And my question is, do you read the Village Voice? Absolutely not. I don't believe that's true, but I believe we need to demonstrate that this is not true, that we get our friends and neighbors involved. We got to get rid of the apathy. There's a lot of apathy that's a natural part of life that basically says, well, someone else will take care of that. Maybe Phil will take care of that. He'll go around and stop this for us. No, this is all of our job and all of our responsibility to do this. We need to get involved. What I recommend doing is as you go back home and you find people of similar thinking, build little pods of people that are going to work against this. So you don't individually have to carry the entire load. So maybe one week, Fred goes to the board meeting and voices his complaint, and Sally writes a letter to the editor, and John, sends letters to the POA board, and we just do this over and over and over and over and over again until they're absolutely convinced that we're against the CMP. And what I think is going to happen, I think there's a couple of people at the upper echelon of the board in the village that are for this. I think there's several board members that are nervous about it. They don't know what to do. They don't know that they have the support. They don't know that there's this many people that are willing to stand up and go, stop. And personally, all I want them to do is stop. Let's analyze this thing for a while. Let's do some study on this for a while, and then let's all vote on it. Anything this transformative has to be voted on. So we can't allow a group of 7, 8 people to decide our future. It's one thing if they were on track, we'd probably applaud them and pat them on the back and head to the golf course or the tennis center. But they're way off track. I mean, they are so off track, this thing is almost laughable the deeper that you get into it. But we need to get together. We need to spread the message. All of you need to let the village know, let the POA know that we do not want the CMP. We also have petitions out front that some of you maybe signed when you came in. We're going to continue to have those petitions. That I believe Laura's going to have them at the next seminars, at the next forums. We need to continue to get those and use those as well as a tool. We the People at the website, which is I did? We the People. There you go. And sign the petition there. Help us any way you can. Get involved. This is your village, okay? You're the ones that are going to be affected by this. I'm just up here talking. It's going to affect me, but all of us are in the same boat. So what we're going to do now is you were all given some cards, or there's some cards out front with pencils, and I'm going to answer questions. We need to hand them up over here. Are you going to go pick them up, or how are you going to handle this?
Okay, so those of you who did get a card and pencil, go ahead and ask your questions. They need to be CMP related, please. And if you don't have a card and you want a card, raise your hand. We have volunteers here that will pass the cards to you, and we'll collect them and start answering. If you need to have a break right now, feel free. I know it's kind of crowded, but if you need to have a break, we'll come back in about 10 minutes or less.